To this headline story now, the South African Reserve Bank has cut the repo rate by 50 basis points. This is the fourth time the Monetary Policy Committee has voted to cut the repo rate this year, bringing it to 3.75%. Now, Governor Nascence Advisory says GDP is expected to grow by 3.8% in 2021 and 2.9% in 2022. He's cautioned that getting back to pre-pandemic activity levels will take time. Let's get you some analysis now on the various issues around the economy. We're joined on the line by Director of Nascence Advisory and Research, Xhanti Payi, who will unpack some of the issues for us. Xhanti, I was very interested to read the article you posted on Twitter earlier this week. You're talking about us living through a revolution. It certainly feels like that. This time, it's an attack by an unseen virus. It's not pre-apartheid, it's not the generals of World War II.
That is the case, and good morning. I think that one of the things that we had anticipated, and I think, if you were to ask anyone this time last year what they fear are, the expectations that I think as the Reserve Bank, nobody would have, we would have thought a number of things, but we wouldn't have thought a virus. And I think one of the things that one has to think about is, what is this actually, what does it look like if we look back in history? And I think the only thing we could find is really that this looks like a war, and it looks like a revolution, a massive change. And we know that massive economies in wars tend to actually lead to revolutions, new kinds of thinking, new kinds of being, and new kinds of outlooks. So I think that this is the only way we can actually think about this. And I think perhaps it is important that we focus in that way.
And I think it is true what you say about the crisis, that this is the most challenging crisis we've faced since World War II, because what the coronavirus represents is a threat for everyone in the world. It's not, something that is specific to South Africa or specific to the US or any part of the world. So if you try to think about something that relates, it's most likely World War II.
It definitely is, and I think that and some of the responses have been in that way, right? In terms of actually, making sure that, people are tended to, are protected, stay home, those kinds of things. But I think the only difference there, and a big difference though, is that during war economies, we usually engage people into going to work. So we ask people, we have to go and work. We are manufacturing food. We are making sure that people are fed. We are making sure that, we've got arms and all of that sort of thing. So, and the third thing here, of course, is that instead of actually, engaging people in a big work effort, we're asking them to stay at home. And that difference is actually not something that is small. It's something that we make sure that we have to take care of, because I think if you've asked people to stay home and to make sacrifices, remember again in war, we usually ask people to make sacrifices, whether it's soldiers, whether it's people who are in manufacturing, teachers, becoming nurses and care workers, that sort of thing. But certainly now we are leaving some people behind, and I think that is something that's hugely problematic, because one of the things that you want to do, and one of the things that war economies are known to be like, is that they actually do tend to get people working. And in our country, we've actually asked people to sit down, stay home, and the third thing about that, of course, is that then, we lead them into very, very poor economic conditions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So as we try to cut through some of the spin and look at the positives and the negatives that may come out of this global threat, let's look at the positives here. What are some of the lessons we may have learned from previous threats to us as humanity that we may apply here?
I think the main thing, I'm interested that you actually live there, because as I say, it's difficult to continue with that narrative of a war economy, because here we've asked people to do things slightly differently. But I think the main thing that we have to bear in mind is that one of the things that we really, really did believe in South Africa, and certainly people like myself, was that, we want people to be self-doers, self-supporters. They have to be innovators. We want people to be entrepreneurs. And in that sense, so, we continuously have been building an informal economy. And we thought that was a good thing. And people like myself actually started saying, well, also we mustn't force people to register. Why must we make people register when there's no need to? We are finding now that actually there's been a great need, because those people who are in the informal sector are hugely unsupported, because all the support structures are built for people who are in the main or formal economy. So I think that's a sad thing that now we have to take forward and say, look, how do we protect workers? How do we make sure that those people who are starters, those people who are entrepreneurial, those people who provide jobs, don't sit outside in times of crisis, in times of economic shocks, because we are going to have more economic shocks in the future. This teaches an opportunity then to say, how do we provide for people who are out there working, doing their best, taking initiative, so that they are not now those very same people who are vulnerable in these times. But I think at the same time, I'm looking at a clip that you are showing of people, making masks, that we've also had the opportunity to realize that South Africans are quite resilient. They can see opportunity where it exists, so people are turning their factories around. I'm making the article the example of a factory that is in the Western Cape that has been for luxury linen and household goods, is now making protective gear for hospitals, making protective gear for individuals. And those kinds of things are critical. We've got, car factories making now protective equipment and ventilators. So we can actually change our economy around, and we need to actually take that as a positive in order to say, when we design the new economy, how do we make sure that it takes care of all our...
And actually, the issue that you touched on now, that some factories are now moving from their normal production to making masks. Many of those people who are making the masks are actually doing so from home. So the question then becomes, what does the normal office or the normal factory floor look like post-COVID-19?
I know, this is quite an interesting thing, because I think for some time, remember, we've been sort of expecting this fourth industrial revolution. And before even that kind of talk, many companies were starting to encourage people, if you don't have many people, for example, who are always traveling, in terms of their jobs, so if you're a salesperson, if you have an office desk, they were working on hot desks. So basically, people would not be required to be at work. Now we're realizing that actually a lot more people were not required to be at work, because clearly most of us can work from home. I can even imagine places like call centers, that in a call center there's no real reason why you should be in a big office building, when you could actually sit in a booth at home and be able to do both things, raise your children, take care of your family, and be still at work. And I think this is true of many things. Even broadcasters are now broadcasting from home. So we clearly can see that, those people who have been building office space, for example, that office space is probably going to be, for the most part, obsolete. Many of us are learning to buy things on the internet. That means that actually retail centers are going to be, also, reduced. And those kinds of things are a huge change in terms of the way we've thought about the world. But I think, again, it's a positive thing, because if I think about, the Minister of Human Settlements looking for places to place people in the city centers, if we have a lot of office space that's being available, we can convert that into places of people staying and being also closer to work. So I think there's a grand opportunity to redesign the way we've been living, and bring people closer to work, I guess, as it were. Make sure we engineer those township economies to be fit for a new kind of world, so people can manufacture from home, people can work from home. And those kinds of things are important, because they will give us more time. Just imagine how much time we're going to save for people traveling to work, when they can actually wake up and start being at work, although I don't think that's a good idea.
No, listen, I think the downside probably of that is that companies will also realize that they actually don't need the big workforce that they've been operating with in the past. But Xhanti, thanks very much for your time this morning. It's been great chatting to you again, and this is not going to be an excuse for you to not coming to studio post-COVID-19. That's Xhanti Payi, who is the director of Nascence Advisory and Research, and he believes there is a different kind of war on the go, and what it needs is revolutionary thinking post-COVID-19.